That night, I stared at the BMW with a red bow screaming across the parking lot while my envelope held exactly $2. I left the party at 2 in the morning and blocked their numbers, thinking it was the end. I was wrong. By sunrise, something else had vanished. Not family love, but my legal identity. I did not come back to apologize. I returned to shut the trap. My name is Marissa Vaughn. I am 34 years old, and I assess liability for a living. As a risk manager at Cedargate Compliance in downtown Charlotte, my job is to look at a stable system and find the hairline fracture that could bring the whole thing down. I live by a code of absolute discipline. I rent a modest apartment in the 4th Ward. I drive a sedan that I paid off 3 years ago. I cleared my student loans by eating rice and beans while my friends went to Cancun. I do not like surprises. My parents, Dale and Krista, love surprises, specifically the kind that involve enabling my younger sister, Brielle. Brielle is 29. She has never held a job for longer than 6 months. She calls herself a lifestyle curator on social media, but pays her rent with checks signed by our father. To Dale and Krista, she is a fragile spirit who needs protection. To them, I am the cold machine that runs on its own. They assume I do not need anything because I never ask for anything. We were at a steakhouse off Tryon Street to celebrate Brielle's latest vague career development. She called it a promotion. I called it a lateral move to a reception desk. We walked out into the humid North Carolina night, and there it was, a brand new white BMW Series 4. It sat under the parking lot halogen lights. A massive red bow was strapped to the roof like a fresh wound. "It's a lease, Marissa," my mother said quickly when she saw my face, "just to help her get established." Brielle shrieked. She did a little hop and covered her mouth. The entire family clapped. Dale handed her the keys with a wet look in his eyes. Then he turned to me. He pulled a standard white envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it over. It was thin. I waited until they were busy taking photos of Brielle on the hood of the car. I walked to the edge of the lot and tore the flap open. Inside were 2 single-dollar bills. Not a check, not a gift card. 2 crinkled $1 bills. There was a yellow sticky note attached to the money. In my mother's looping handwriting, it read, "Don't be selfish. Remember that money isn't everything." I felt the blood drain out of my face. It was not the amount. It was the calculation. It was a precise, measured insult designed to put me in my place. Brielle walked over to me. She smelled like expensive vanilla perfume and new leather. She leaned in close to my ear so the parents could not hear. "You always think you're better than us," she whispered. Her voice was low and hard. "You think you're so smart, but you're just alone." She pulled back and smiled for the camera. Dale looked at us and laughed. He nodded, like he agreed with whatever she had just said. I did not scream. I did not throw the money. I put the $2 in my pocket. I got into my sensible sedan and drove home in silence. I merged onto the highway and focused on the white lines. I felt like I was swallowing glass. It was 2 in the morning when I stood in the hallway of my apartment building. My hands were shaking, but my eyes were completely dry. I took out my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Dad. Block caller. I scrolled to Mom. Block caller. I scrolled to Brielle. Block caller. I opened the family group chat and left it. I deleted the thread. I stood there in the quiet hum of the hallway and stared at the blank screen. It felt like I had just cut off a limb to save the body. I thought that was it. I thought the silence was my victory. Then the phone screen lit up. It was not a text. It was a push notification from an email client I rarely checked. The subject line read, "Security alert confirmation of contact information change." I frowned. The email address referenced was an old one, a junk account I used for newsletters and throwaway signups back in college. I tapped the notification. The timestamp was 1 minute ago, right after I blocked them. "Probably just spam," I said to the empty hallway. I tried to dismiss it. I tried to walk into my apartment and go to sleep. But the hair on my arms stood up. It was that specific intuition I used every day at Cedargate. It was the sense that something was wrong with the structure. I looked at the phone again. It did not feel like spam. It felt like the soft click of someone picking the lock on my front door. Growing up in Asheville, I learned early on that silence was the price of admission to my own family. I was the good one, the reliable one, the one who did not need to be worried about. If Brielle broke a vase, my mother would hug her because she was crying. If I cleaned up the glass, I was simply doing what was expected. I carried that dynamic all the way to adulthood. I studied late while Brielle sneaked out. I worked a double shifts to pay for textbooks while Brielle needed bail money for a misunderstanding at a shopping mall. I clawed my way out of that small town to Charlotte. I built a career from nothing but grit and caffeine, yet the only time my phone rang was when they needed a wire transfer or a character reference. I sat at my desk at Cedar Gate Compliance and stared at the dual monitors. I tried to focus on a risk assessment spreadsheet for a logistics client. My chest felt hollow. The memory of last night kept replaying in my head. It was not just the $2. It was the history behind it. Suddenly, a memory from last year surfaced. It was cold and sharp. My mother had visited me for lunch. She had pushed a document across the table between the salad bowls. "It is just a medical power of attorney. Marissa," she had said, her eyes wide and innocent. "Just for convenience. If you get into an accident, we need to be able to make decisions. You live alone." I had refused. I told her I had a living will on file with my firm. She had called me cold. She said I treated them like strangers. Then there was the dinner 6 months ago. I had left my purse on the table to go to the restroom. When I came back, Brielle was hovering over my open bag with her phone out. The flash went off. "Just checking the lighting," she had giggled, shoving her phone into her pocket. "Your driver's license photo is so bad. Risa, I was going to post it as a joke." I had let it go. I always let it go. My desk phone remained silent, but my personal cell phone buzzed against the hardwood of the desk. I looked down. The screen displayed unknown restricted. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I was not ready to hear their voices. A minute later, a text message popped up. It was from a number I did not recognize. "You blocked everyone, so don't blame us." There was no signature. The message sat there, glowing and toxic. My stomach turned over. I minimized my work spreadsheet and opened a new browser tab. I logged into a credit monitoring service I usually checked once a quarter. My heart hammered against my ribs. A red banner appeared at the top of the dashboard. "New hard inquiry detected." It was dated today. Someone had applied for a line of credit using my social security number. I clicked for details. The mailing address on the application was not my apartment in the 4th Ward. It was a post office box in a town 3 hours away that I had never visited. I felt a wave of nausea. I stood up to get water, but the security guard from the lobby appeared at my cubicle door. He was holding a thick express envelope. "Ms. Vaughn," he said, holding it out. "This was dropped off downstairs. Courier said it was urgent. It was signed for, but the guy at the desk realized it wasn't you who came down." I frowned. "I didn't order anything." "It says Mo Vaughn," the guard said. "Here is the delivery receipt copy." I took the slip of paper. I looked at the signature line. There was a scrawl there. It read M. Vaughn. It looked like my signature. It had the same loop on the V and the same sharp slant on the M. But I had been sitting at my desk on the 20th floor when this was signed. That isn't my hand," I whispered. "Ma'am," the guard asked. "Nothing," I said, my voice hardening. "Thank you." I sat back down. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. I looked at the $2 bills I had tossed onto my desk earlier that morning. I realized then that I had been looking at the situation all wrong. The $2 were not just an insult to make me leave. They were a distraction. They wanted me angry. They wanted me to cut contact. They wanted me to look away so they could work in the dark. I looked at the forged signature again. It was practiced. It was confident. My family did not just want to cut me out. They wanted to become me. I locked the door of the conference room and dialed the fraud department of my bank. The hold music played for 10 minutes before a human voice answered. I kept my voice steady as I asked about the notification regarding my savings account. The agent typed on the other end. Ms. Vaughn? That account was dormant for 3 years, the agent said. But we received a request to restore access yesterday. The verification code was sent to the number on file ending in 45. I felt a cold sweat prickle my hairline. My number ended in 89. The number ending in 45 belonged to my father. That is not my number, I said, gripping the phone. Freeze it! Freeze everything! I hung up and immediately tried to log into my retirement portfolio. Access was denied. I clicked the password reset link. The system displayed a confirmation message, link sent to vaughnunc@gmail.com. I stared at the screen. That was my university email address. I had not used it since graduation day. I had not even thought about it in a decade. Someone had logged in, bypassed the security questions, and rerouted the two-factor authentication to an inbox they controlled. They were not just stealing money, they were locking me out of the rooms of my own life, one by one. I left work at noon. I drove to the main post office on West Trade Street. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I demanded to see the history of address changes for my name. The clerk was irritated, but he pulled the physical file. Here is it, he said, sliding a photocopy across the counter. Submitted in person 3 days ago. Or it was a standard change of address form, moving my mail to a P.O. box in Asheville. I looked at the attached ID copy. It was a North Carolina driver's license with my name and my birth date. But the photo was wrong. It was Brielle. Her hair was dyed darker and she was wearing glasses. But it was Brielle. The clerk had not looked closely enough to see the difference in bone structure. I drove back to Cedar Gate Compliance in a daze. Tessa Grady found me in the break room staring at the coffee machine. Tessa was the senior analyst and the only person in the building who knew I even had a sister. I showed her the photo of the form. You need a lawyer, Rissa, Tessa said. Not corporate counsel. You need a shark who specializes in identity theft. I don't want to make this a huge thing, I said. I just want them to stop. If I get a lawyer, it destroys the family. Honey, look at that paper, Tessa said, tapping the photocopy. They already destroyed it. You're just the last one to know. She texted me a contact card for a man named Nolan Price. I met Nolan Price at 4 o'clock. His office was not in a glass tower. It was in a renovated brick building in a quiet part of town. He did not wear a suit jacket. He wore a crisp button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He listened to me for 20 minutes without taking a single note. He looked like a man who had seen every variety of betrayal. You think this is about the $2 or the car, Nolan said. It isn't. You are being paper-driven by someone. They are systematically replacing you as the decision-maker in your own life. How? I asked. Think, Nolan said. Have you ever signed anything for them? Anything at all? I racked my brain. Just a scan. Last year, Mom said they needed a copy of my passport and a signature sample for a family insurance policy she was buying. I emailed it to her. Nolan turned to his computer. He logged into the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds portal. He typed in my name. He hit enter. A document appeared on the large monitor on the wall. Limited power of attorney. It was dated 7 days ago. The document granted Dale and Chris Devon full authority to manage my financial assets and real estate in the event of my unavailability or emergency. I stood up. My legs felt weak. I never signed that, I whispered. I looked closer at the screen. The address listed for the principal me was my parents' house, not my apartment. I looked at the bottom of the page. There was a notary stamp, Ashley Miller. I know her, I said, pointing at the screen. That is Ashley. She was Brielle's best friend in high school. She failed chemistry twice. Nolan leaned back in his chair. The look on his face was not pity. It was the cold focus of a general looking at a battlefield. This is a specific type of fraud, Nolan said. They are creating a legal narrative where you are incapacitated. They need you to disappear from the game. On paper. And they have started. Do not call them, Nolan said. He leaned across his desk and looked me dead in the eye. Do not email them. Do not scream at them. Right now, your silence is the only weapon we have. He was right. I had blocked my parents and Brielle in a fit of rage at 2 a.m, but now that emotional reaction had become a tactical advantage. They assumed I was just the sulking daughter who was angry about receiving $2 while her sister got a luxury car. They thought I was throwing a tantrum. They had no idea I had found the power of attorney. To them, the silence meant I was disconnected and vulnerable. In reality, I was watching every move they made. I spent the next 48 hours dismantling my digital life. I went to a credit union on the other side of Charlotte and opened a new checking account. I rerouted my direct deposit from Cedargate. I placed a freeze on all 3 credit bureaus. I started a physical logbook. Every minute was accounted for. Every suspicion was written down in black ink. I needed to know if they had help on the inside. At the office, I printed a few documents. They looked like standard tax forms, but I had watermarked them with a subtle gray code in the footer. I left them on the communal printer tray for an hour before retrieving them. Nothing happened with the paper, but the digital trap snapped shut almost immediately. An automated email from the Cedargate IT department landed in my inbox. Alert, failed, login attempt. Human Resources Portal. I expanded the details. The attempt had used my correct username and an old password variation I used to share with my mother for Netflix. The IP address was not from Charlotte. It was geolocated to a residential provider just outside of Asheville. They were trying to get into my payroll system. They wanted to see how much I made. They wanted to divert the stream. I forwarded the log to Nolan. We immediately filed an emergency motion with the court to freeze any transaction based on the fraudulent power of attorney. We sent certified letters to every major bank in North Carolina, flagging my identity for potential fraud. I thought we were ahead of them. I was wrong. My phone rang while I was driving home. It was the fraud department of my primary bank. Ms. Vaughn, the representative said. We received your alert, but we need to verify a transaction that cleared yesterday. It was a counter withdrawal for $500. I did not make a withdrawal, I said, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. It was processed at a branch in Asheville, the voice continued. The person presented a notarized power of attorney and your social security number. The teller noted it as a medical expense advance. I hung up and called Nolan. I was shaking. It was not the money. $500 was nothing compared to my life savings. It was the violation. Why so little? I asked Nolan. If they have the power, why not drain the account? They are testing the fence, Nolan said calmly. They want to see if the alarm goes off. If that $500 goes through without you noticing, they will come back for $50,000. They are practicing. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. They were testing me like a lab rat. That evening, my phone rang again. It was a number I had not blocked. My Aunt Linda. She was my father's older sister and usually stayed out of the drama. I picked up. Marissa. She sounded breathless. Oh, thank goodness. I tried to call your mom, but she said you were unreachable. I am here, Aunt Linda, I said. Well, Brielle just told us the wonderful news, she chirped. She said you're going on a long business trip to Europe for Cedargate, and that you're signing the deed of your condo over to the family to manage while you're gone. That is so generous of you. Honey, I know Brielle is just dying to decorate it. The world seemed to stop spinning. The narrative was complete. They were not just stealing my money. They were writing me out of the script entirely. Long business trip. It was the perfect cover. If I disappeared, if I stopped showing up at family events, if my bank accounts changed, they already had the explanation ready for the neighbors. Marissa's away. Marissa's generous. Marissa gave us the house. I did not scream. I did not tell her the truth. For the first time, I saw the entire board. Yes, I lied, my voice steady and terrifyingly calm. It is. Quite a development. Brielle must be very excited. "Oh, she is," Aunt Linda said. I hung up. I stood in the center of my living room. I looked at the walls they planned to steal. I realized then that I did not need to stop them yet. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to walk so far out onto the ledge that when I finally cut the rope, there would be nowhere left to fall. The video had 20,000 views within the first hour. I watched it from a burner account on my laptop while sitting in Nolan's office. It was a masterpiece of modern manipulation set to sad, acoustic piano music. The camera panned over the white BMW, lingered on the red bow, and then cut to my parents wiping tears from their faces. Then came Brielle. She looked directly into the lens with ring light perfection. The caption read, "Family is a blessing, even when some choose money over love. Praying for lost souls today." She never named me. She did not have to. The comments section did the work for her. Strangers praised her grace. My cousins and aunts flooded the replies with prayer hands emojis. When I checked my own phone, the blockade had failed. I had blocked their numbers, but I could not block the entire internet. Messages were appearing on my LinkedIn profile. Emails from distant relatives landed in my work inbox. They all said the same thing: "Call your mother. Stop being so cruel." "They are controlling the public narrative," Nolan said, watching the video loop. "They want the community to see you as the villain so no one looks too closely at the victim." But the social media campaign was just the smoke. The fire was happening at my office. 2 hours later, I was summoned to human resources. I did not go alone. I walked into the glass-walled conference room with Nolan right behind me. The HR director, a woman named Karen, who usually greeted me with a smile, looked down at her file folder. She did not make eye contact. "Marissa, we received a call from your father this morning," Karen said stiffly. "He expressed grave concerns about your mental stability. He mentioned potential self-harm. Given the nature of your role in risk management, we have to take these reports seriously." I felt the air leave the room. Dale had not just called to complain. He had called to destroy my credibility. If I was unstable, I could not manage risk. If I was unstable, I needed a guardian. "My father is retaliating because I cut off financial contact," I said, my voice ice cold. "Nolan is here to provide you with documentation regarding an active identity theft investigation involving my family." Karen blinked. She shifted the papers on the table. "Well," she said, looking uncomfortable, "that puts your request in a different light." "My request?" I asked. Karen slid a document across the table. "The request for indefinite unpaid leave you submitted last night. We had already tentatively approved it pending the medical documentation." I looked at the paper. It was a digital form. It bore my electronic signature. The timestamp was 3 a.m. I did not send this," I said. My hand hovered over the paper. "I was asleep." I looked at Nolan. His jaw was set hard. They did not just want my savings account. They wanted me unemployed. They wanted to sever my income stream so that when the rent came due, I would have no choice but to crawl back or let them take over. "This is fraudulent," Nolan said, his voice booming in the small room. "We are filing a police report regarding this specific unauthorized access. If Cedargate processes this, you are complicit." We managed to stop the leave request. I countered by taking a legitimate 3-day personal leave to handle legal matters, but I demanded that IT lock down my account with a hardware security key that only I possessed. I walked out of the building still employed, but I felt sick. They were trying to erase me from my own life. Back at Nolan's office, we tried to find the weak link. Nolan had pulled the record of Ashley Miller, the notary who had stamped the fake power of attorney. "She has 2 prior complaints for improper dating of documents," Nolan said, tossing a file onto the desk. "But nothing criminal. It is sloppy, not malicious. We need more to break the seal." My phone buzzed. It was Tessa from work. She had been digging through public records and cross-referencing names Brielle followed on Instagram. "Risa, you need to see this," Tessa said when I picked up. I found a Venmo transaction Brielle didn't make private before she locked her account. It was from 3 months ago, a payment of $200. She buys clothes. Tessa, I said, rubbing my temples. So what? No, Tessa said. The payment was to Brielle from a user named Paper Trail Consulting. I looked them up. It is a Shell LLC registered in Delaware, but the registered agent, he is currently under indictment in Florida for creating fake academic transcripts and altered heavy machinery titles. I sat up straight. She is on their payroll, I asked. Consulting fee, Tessa corrected. Or maybe a referral fee. Risa, she didn't just use a notary friend. Your sister's working with a professional ring. I looked at Nolan and repeated what Tessa had said. For the first time, the lawyer smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. That connects the dots, Nolan said. They are not just a messy family, they are clients of a criminal enterprise, and we just found the receipt. The legal machinery began to turn with a grinding metal sound. Nolan filed an emergency motion to subpoena the security footage from the strip mall where the notary public operated. He also demanded the surveillance tapes from the post office for the morning the change of address form was submitted. We were building a timeline of physical evidence to match the paper trail. While Nolan fought with the court clerks, I went to the back of my closet and dug out a dusty laptop I had not used since my senior year of college. It was heavy, and the battery was dead. I plugged it in and waited 10 minutes for the operating system to boot up. I navigated to the settings of my old university email account. I checked the forwarding rules. There it was. A rule had been created to automatically forward every incoming email to a generic Yahoo address I did not recognize. I clicked on the activity log. The rule was created the night of the party at 3:15 in the morning. I ran the IP address through a geolocation tool. It did not just point to a town. It pointed to a specific residential service provider. It was the Wi-Fi network at my parents' house. They didn't wait, I whispered to the empty room. I was still driving home on the highway while they were hacking my email. Nolan sent a formal cease and desist letter to Dale and Chris Devon that afternoon. It stated clearly that I was aware of the fraudulent power of attorney and that any attempt to use it would be met with criminal charges. I wanted to call them. I wanted to scream. But I listened to Nolan. I stayed in the dark. Their response came 48 hours later. It was not an apology. It was a petition filed in the Mecklenburg County Clerk of Superior Court. They are filing for temporary guardianship, Nolan said, reading the document. His face was grim. They are claiming you have suffered a psychotic break. They cite your refusal to speak to family, your erratic resignation letter, and a history of financial instability as proof that you lack the capacity to manage your own affairs. I let out a dry, sharp laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. They skipped right past power of attorney, I said. They want to own me, like I am a child or a geriatric patient. It is a common tactic, Nolan said. If they get guardianship, they control the lawsuits. They could dismiss the fraud case against themselves on your behalf. We went on the offensive. I spent the next day sitting in the office of a forensic psychiatrist. I took every cognitive test they had. I answered hours of questions about my history, my job, and my finances. I needed a medical professional to certify that I was not only sane, but hyper-competent. We gathered affidavits from my boss and my landlord. We built a fortress of sanity. Then the phone rang. It was a blocked number. Nolan answered it on speaker. It was a woman with a shaky voice. She said she was a former receptionist at Ashley Miller's notary office. She'd seen the news about the investigation on a local legal blog Nolan had tipped off. I don't want trouble, the woman said. But I remember that day. Ashley cleared the schedule. Your sister? The blonde one, she came in the back door. Did you see them sign anything? Nolan asked. I saw them high-five, the woman said. And I saw the blonde girl hand Ashley a manila envelope. It was thick. It looked like a brick of cash. She said something about a down payment on the future. Nolan hung up and looked at me. The room was silent. Brielle, I said. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. I had assumed my parents were the architects and Brielle was just the spoiled beneficiary. I was wrong. My parents were just the vehicle. Brielle was the driver. She was not just a girl who wanted a BMW. She was a woman who was willing to pay a bribe to erase her sister from the legal record. She was investing in my destruction. She isn't just the favorite child, I said, standing up and walking to the window to look at the Charlotte skyline. She is a predator. We have exactly 10 minutes, Nolan said. He placed a small black digital recorder on the mahogany desk between us. The red light blinked in a steady rhythm. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording, but since I am here as your counsel, we are going to announce it halfway through. We want to catch them in the shift. I nodded. My hands were cold. I unlocked my phone and went to the settings. I scrolled down to the blocked list. I tapped the red circle next to my mother's number. Unblock. I put the phone on speaker and dialed. It rang twice. Hello? My mother's voice was ragged. She sounded like she had been crying for days, or perhaps she had just practiced the sound of it. It's me, I said. Marissa. She exploded into a sob immediately. Oh God, Marissa, you are making this so hard. You are making the family look so bad. People are talking. Why are you doing this to us? I am not doing anything, Mom, I said, keeping my voice flat. I am just at work. You need to sign the papers, she pleaded. Just sign the guardianship papers so we can stop this court nonsense. We just want to make sure you are safe. You are clearly not well. My father's voice came on the line. He must have been listening on an extension. Risa, Dale said. His voice was soft, that fake gentle tone he used when he was trying to sell a used car with a transmission leak. Listen to your mother. We are not trying to hurt you. Just sign a statement saying the power of attorney was voluntary. If you do that, we will give you back your share. We can work out a payment plan for the money. He was bargaining? He was trying to buy my compliance with my own money. I have a question, I said. I looked at Nolan. He nodded for me to proceed. How did you know about my university email address? I haven't used it in 10 years. The line went dead silent. The background static hissed. They had not expected me to ask about the mechanics of the theft. They thought I was still emotional about the car. Then I heard a rustling sound. Someone snatched the phone. You think you are so smart, don't you? It was Brielle. Her voice was sharp and venomous. You think you can just leave at 2 a.m. and block us and we disappear. You chose this. Marissa, you walked away. We are just picking up the pieces you left behind. Nolan leaned forward. He spoke clearly into the speakerphone. This is Nolan Price, legal counsel for Missette Vaughn. I am advising you that this call is being recorded for use in upcoming litigation regarding identity theft and fraud. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of panic. Oh, Brielle said. Her voice pitched up an octave instantly. Mr. Price, we didn't know she had a lawyer. We are just worried sick about her. We just want to reconcile. Is that right? Nolan asked. Yes, Brielle insisted. We are family. We just want to make sure her finances are secure. I mean, with everything going on. What is going on, Brielle? I asked. You are unstable. She snapped, dropping the mask for a second before catching herself. I mean, we saw the activity. We just wanted to make sure your savings were safe. That $500 was just, we were going to put it in a trust for you. I froze. I looked at Nolan. His eyes widened. I had never mentioned the amount. The bank had told me. Nolan knew, but we had never listed the specific sum of the test withdrawal in any document we sent them. We had only mentioned suspicious activity. I never told you it was $500, I said softly. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Mom said. Brielle stammered. I guessed. Only the person who made the withdrawal knows the exact amount, Nolan said, his voice dropping to a low growl. Thank you, Miss Vaughn, you have been very helpful. I tapped the red icon. End call. I went back to settings. Block caller. The room was quiet. The red light on the recorder kept blinking. We got it, Nolan said. He sat back and exhaled. She admitted knowledge of a transaction that she legally should not know exists. She just tied the noose around her own neck. I looked at the phone. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel happy. I felt a deep, sickening clarity. They did not love me. They did not even really hate me. To them, I was just an obstacle. I was a firewall they needed to hack, and they would not stop until the system locked them out permanently. She will not stop, I told Nolan. She thinks she can talk her way out of the number. Let her try, Nolan said, picking up the recorder. But now we have the voice of the architect. The clerk of the Superior Court set the date for the guardianship hearing on a Tuesday morning. It was 48 hours away. The timeline was tight, but that was exactly how we wanted it. We needed to catch them while they were still confident. My phone vibrated with a notification from a neighborhood Facebook group I had forgotten to leave. Brielle had been busy. She had hired a local public relations freelancer to spin the story. The post was titled, "A Plea for Help When Mental Health Tears a Family Apart." It detailed the tragic decline of an unnamed eldest daughter who had abandoned her loving parents. The comments were vicious. People I went to high school with were offering prayers for my parents and suggesting I be committed for my own safety. Ignore the noise, Nolan said when I showed him the screen. They are trying to bait you into a public outburst. If you comment, you look unstable. If you stay silent, you look detached. We will answer them in court. At Cedargate, the attacks moved from social media to the server room. The head of IT called me down to his office. He turned his monitor to face me. Someone tried to brute force your payroll history an hour ago, he said. They were looking for your bonus structure and credit card expenses. They want to prove you are spending recklessly. The system flagged it because the request originated from a device with a MAC address that has been pinging our firewall all week. Did they get anything? I asked. No, he said. We blocked it, and we logged every keystroke. I forwarded the logs to Nolan. He added them to the growing mountain of evidence. We had the IP addresses. We had the post office footage of Brielle in a disguise. We had the email forwarding rules set up on my parents' Wi-Fi. Then came the mistake we were waiting for. Nolan's investigator called us at 3 p.m. Ashley Miller, the notary, had been seen logging into the electronic scheduling system at her office. She was deleting entries. She was trying to scrub the record of the day my sister visited. She is panicking, Nolan said, slamming his hand on the desk. She knows she is exposed. We are filing for an immediate preservation order. If she deletes one byte of data, she goes to jail for spoliation of evidence. I left Nolan's office late. The parking garage was dim and smelled of gasoline and rain. I walked to my car and stopped. There was a white envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. It was not a flyer. I put on a pair of gloves I kept in the glove compartment for pumping gas. I pulled the envelope free. Inside was a printed photograph. It was a grainy shot of me walking into the Cedargate building 2 days ago. It had been taken from a car across the street. Scrawled on the back in black marker were 4 words, "Don't make it big." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I did not run. I did not cry. I walked back into the building and handed the envelope directly to the building security chief. We pulled the garage surveillance tapes. We saw a hooded figure place the note. It was too blurry to identify the face, but the car they drove away in was registered to my Uncle Jerry. "They are trying to scare you," Nolan said over the phone. "They want you to settle before the hearing." "I am not scared," I said. "I am angry." Add the threat to the file. It proves they know they are losing. I drove home taking a different route. When I got to my apartment, Tessa was waiting in the lobby. She looked pale. She was holding a stack of printed spreadsheets. "Risa, you need to sit down," Tessa said. "What is it?" I asked. "That company," Tessa said, her voice shaking. "Paper Trail Consulting, the one that paid Brielle. I kept digging. I ran the tax ID number through a watch list database I have access to because of the bank compliance project. And it isn't just a shell company for messy families, Tessa said. It is a front for a federal identity fraud ring operating out of Florida. They specialize in creating new identities for people running from debt or the law. Brielle didn't just hire them to fake a power of attorney. She is on their payroll as a recruiter. She finds vulnerable targets. I felt the room tilt. She is working for the mob, I whispered. She is working for a felony enterprise, Tessa said. And she tried to feed you to them? I called Nolan. I told him everything for the first time in weeks. I heard him laugh. It was a dark, satisfied sound. Marissa, Nolan said. Bring those papers to me now. If they try to drag you into family court tomorrow to call you crazy, they are going to be very surprised. They are pulling on a thread that is attached to a federal investigation, and the judge is going to hear every single word. The air conditioning in the Mecklenburg County Courthouse was set to freezing. It seeped through the fabric of my navy blazer and settled deep into my bones. I stood in the corridor outside courtroom 4B. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed with a low electric hum that sounded like trapped flies. I held a black expandable folder against my chest. My knuckles were white, but my hands were not shaking. The time for shaking was over. I was no longer a daughter or a sister. I was a delivery system for the truth. The heavy oak doors were thick, but they were not soundproof. I stood close to the wood and listened to the performance happening inside. My mother was speaking. She had pitched her voice perfectly between grief and exhaustion. We just want her home, Krista sobbed. She stopped answering our calls. She stopped eating. We believe she's having a breakdown. We just want to protect her from herself. Nolan Price stood inside the room, representing me while I waited for the signal. He had told me exactly how this would play out. Do not react, he had told me in the lobby 10 minutes ago. Let them talk. The more they speak, the more rope they buy to hang themselves with. I heard the judge speak next. His voice was bored and tired. Counsel, do you have evidence of this alleged incapacity? I heard the rustle of papers. Their lawyer was presenting the exhibits. I knew what they were because Brielle had posted them on a private family forum the night before. They were printouts of a Facebook post from 3 years ago where I complained about insomnia. Then they produced a grainy photograph of me holding a tequila shot at a Cedar Gate Christmas party 2 years ago. It was their smoking gun. They were trying to paint a picture of a woman spiraling out of control. Nolan did not interrupt them. He waited until they were finished. Then I heard his voice. It was calm and sharp as a scalpel. Your Honor, Nolan said, I would like to submit 3 affidavits from board-certified psychiatrists attesting to Ms. Vaughn's full competency. I would also like to submit the server log from Cedar Gate Compliance. It shows a resignation letter was sent using a forged digital signature from an IP address in Asheville, while my client was asleep in Charlotte. There was a silence in the room. Then a chair scraped violently against the floor. She is an ungrateful brat. It was my father. Dale had lost his cool. The mask of the concerned, loving patriarch slipped and shattered on the floor. We sacrificed everything for her, Dale shouted, his voice cracking. And she blocks us. She treats us like dirt over $2. She needs to be controlled. Order, the judge barked. Mr. Vaughn, sit down. Outside in the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the private investigator Nolan had stationed near the elevator. He had sent a video clip timestamped 15 minutes ago. I tapped the screen. The video showed Brielle standing near the water fountain. She looked nervous. She checked her reflection in the glass of a framed portrait. Then she reached into her purse and handed a small silver USB drive to a woman in a gray suit. I recognized the woman. It was Ashley Miller, the notary. They had exchanged evidence right under the nose of the court preservation order. They were trying to sync their stories before Ashley took the stand. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Nolan. One word. Time. I took a deep breath. The hallway smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I did not fix my hair. I did not smooth my skirt. I reached out and placed my hand on the cold brass handle of the courtroom door. I pushed the double doors open. The hinges groaned. The sound in the room died instantly. I walked down the center aisle. The click of my heels on the linoleum sounded like gunshots in the silence. I did not look at the judge yet. I looked at the defense table. Dale dropped his pen. It clattered loudly on the wood. Krista covered her mouth with both hands. Brielle went pale. Her eyes went wide and terrified. They looked like they were seeing a ghost. They had built their entire legal strategy on the gamble that I would be too scared to show up. They thought I was hiding in my apartment. They thought I was the victim who would fade away. I walked through the gate and stood next to Nolan. I placed the thick black folder on the table. I looked at my parents, and then I looked at my sister. I did not smile. I am quite ready to speak now, I said softly. The trap was not just set. I had just sprung it. I stood before the bench and placed my hands flat on the polished wood. The courtroom was silent. I looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I am here, I said, my voice steady and clear. I am alive. I am fully employed, and I have never signed a power of attorney for these people, not for my medical decisions, and certainly not for my money. Nolan did not waste a second. He dimmed the lights and projected a timeline onto the screen. It was a digital autopsy of their crime. First came the email forwarding rule created on the Wi-Fi network of Dale and Krista Vaughn, then the change of address form submitted with the altered ID, then the hard inquiry on my credit report, then the forged power of attorney, then the attempted access of the Cedar Gate payroll system. This was not an emergency intervention, Nolan told the court. This was a hostile takeover. Then came the first blow. The doors opened and the former receptionist from the notary office walked in. She looked nervous, but she pointed a shaking finger at the defense table. I saw the envelope, she testified. It was thick, it was cash, and she gave it to Ashley. She pointed directly at Brielle. The defense lawyer tried to object, but Nolan was already moving to the next strike. He played the video we had captured in the hallway just minutes ago. On the screen, the court saw Brielle hand the silver USB drive to Ashley Miller. Your Honor, Nolan said. That exchange happened in this courthouse, while under a preservation order. We move for the immediate seizure of that device. The judge stared at Ashley Miller. Hand it over. Now! Ashley handed the drive to the bailiff with trembling hands. Our forensic expert plugged it into the court system. It was not a file of innocent documents. It contained a high-resolution image file. It was a scan of my signature from an old student loan document. The metadata showed it had been cropped and pasted onto the power of attorney template. The author of the file was listed as Brielle's MacBook. Brielle stood up. Her face was a mask of panic. It was Mom! She screamed, pointing at our mother. Dad made me do it. I didn't know. I thought we were helping. Sit down, the judge roared. She claims she didn't know, Nolan said calmly. But let's listen to her own words. He played the audio recording from our phone call. Brielle's voice filled the room, sharp and arrogant, mocking me for leaving at 2 a.m. Then came the slip. That $500 was just we were going to put it in a trust. Only the bank and the thief knew the exact amount of the test withdrawal, Nolan said. And now the court knows, too. The judge did not hesitate. He banged his gavel with a sound like a gunshot. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice, the judge ruled. The power of attorney is declared void ab initio. Furthermore, due to the evidence of forgery, witness tampering, and identity fraud, I am referring this entire file to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal investigation. Dale and Krista collapsed into their chairs. My mother buried her face in her hands. But Brielle looked the worst. She went white as a sheet. She realized that the red bow on her BMW was no longer a gift. It was evidence of a bribe. I picked up my folder. I walked past the defense table. I did not scream at them. I stopped for 1 second. $2 didn't make me poor, I said to them. It just showed me your price. I turned my back on them and walked out of the courtroom. I stepped into the bright afternoon sun of Charlotte. I took out my phone. I did not unlock their numbers. Instead, I opened my bank app and activated a new layer of security alerts. I had not just won a case. I had closed the door on them forever. The trap was shut, and I was finally free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm really curious to know where you guys are tuning in from. So drop a comment down below with your city or country. I love reading them. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people.